Hi, dear Facebook audience. So today is Thursday, and we're back with our English for All series with the U.S. Embassy Yerevan. This is our sixth week, and if you failed to follow our classes, previous classes, you can always find them in the video section of the U.S. Embassy Yerevan Facebook page, or you can find them in the comments field of this very video. So today we have Nora Khacharyan with us. Hi, Nora.
Hello. I'm happy to be here today to talk about small talk. I work for the U.S. Agency for International Development as a program analyst.
So as Nora said, we're talking about small talks, and a small talk is a conversation you get involved in a more or less new or fresh environment to avoid this awkward and nervous silence. And you mostly get involved in small talks to show your kindness level, right? To show that you care about the people. And I guess that much of the content of the small talk depends on the setting, right? Where you are in.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're in a really casual environment, like, a grocery store line and it's taking a really long time, or a doctor office waiting room, these are places where you might engage in small talk.
And you can get engaged in small talks to establish necessary ties, or to start new relationship, or even friendship, right? And my question to you, Nora Jan, what is a typical setting for in America to start a small talk? Where can you get engaged in it?
So for me, I have a lot of my daily small talk in the office. Because it's where I spend much of my time, and the kind of questions that you might ask, or things you might say to your coworkers, because you already know them and you probably have a few details about them. Things like, how is your family doing? I saw a nice post on Facebook, something like that, to just break the ice and then eventually talk about business.
And if you're, as Nora said, if you're in your professional environment, but you're not very closely acquainted with the people you're talking to, you can start from very simple matters. For example, that's a conference and you're having a coffee break and you have to get engaged in small talks. You can just say, what do you do, right? What do you do in the professional field? Or you can say, for example, what have you been working on recently? What have you been working on recently? And how about more like relaxed atmosphere in the professional field? What else can be discussed?
So in the professional atmosphere, you always have your standard small talk topics like the weather, or things around the office that you typically talk about. If there's an elevator that's usually slow, or a new painting that someone put in the office, that's something you can talk about. And I'd like to share one of my small talk secrets with you today.
Okay, go ahead.
Which is coffee is your best friend during small talk.
Yeah.
Because if you're really tired and somebody's trying to make small talk with you, you could say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't had my coffee this morning," and they'll probably laugh. Or if you're really excited and they're not, you could say, "Apologies, I had too much coffee this morning. I'm really excited." And if you feel like you've been small talking for too long, you could say, "Excuse me, I really need to get a cup of coffee." And these are all totally acceptable.
But sometimes we get engaged in small talks with total strangers, right? And if you don't know the person, the first thing you do is you get introduced. But that's not the small talk yet, right? And I propose that in such cases, when you need to get engaged with someone you don't know at all, you can start by saying, "Tell me about yourself. Tell me about yourself." Or you can just as well say, "I would like to know more about you. I would like to know more about you." And sometimes, especially in the setting when we're traveling, we have to deal with foreigners. And in that setting, right, it's a bit even more difficult because we don't know anything. We come from different realities. We come from different cultures, right? And the first thing to do, I guess, is to find out where the person comes from, right? So we can start by just simple questions. And what are these questions?
Yeah, I think it's good to ask questions, and definitely in a friendly way so they don't feel out of place. Like, oh, excuse me, where are you from? You know, so that people know that you're not trying to ask it in a rude way. You're just genuinely curious and would like to know more about this person. So that's a good example of a question you could ask.
So where are you from, or where do you come from, right? Where do you come from? And this will initiate a huge ground of further conversation. I mean to say that later you can develop that conversation to reach language issues or culture or history, geography, whatever it is to your palate, right?
Something I would do actually when I was working in Georgia, a good way to do small talk and also learn more about the other culture is to say something like, I really enjoy khinkali. Do you have recommendation of other Georgian foods I should try?
Oh, good. And I think that another typical setting for small talk, especially in this time of COVID, is when we deal with doctors and when we are in this hospital setting. And it's not a secret that doctors are under huge pressure nowadays. Our regards and respect to all of you guys. And for that, I mean, if you want to start a small talk with a nurse or with a doctor, you can say, for example, you are so overloaded. You're so overloaded. How are you holding up, right? How are you holding up? And in Armenian, that can be translated like ինչպես եք դիմանum. I mean, the part of how are you holding up can be translated like ինչպես եք դիմանum. Or you can also say in a more casual atmosphere, you can say ինչպես եք ոտքի վրա մնում. But this is like very colloquial expression, like ինչպես եք ոտքի վրա մնում. How about more relaxed atmosphere when I mean you have common interest with somebody? For example, what is a setting for that?
So, for example, in a movie club, you might be new to the club but want to engage in conversation. So you say, "Oh, I really like action movies because they're so exciting. Is there a genre that you particularly enjoy?" You could also point out an actor that you really like and say, I think Timothée Chalamet is very talented. Do you have a favorite actor?
Yeah. For example, if you're engaged in a language club, for example, you're learning a language, foreign language, it means that you and all the other people there, you have very many things in common. So you can say, for example, I have always been into, say, English or Spanish, right? And how did you decide to learn it? Or you can also say, what was your story? What was your story? Anyway, dear Nora, I think that there is a kind of a formula for the small talks, to introduce a small talk, that is setting the scene and then coming up with a WH question, right? Whatever the setting is, this can work as a perfect formula. So you set the scene and then you go on with a WH question to make the person get involved in your small talk, right? And can you come up with a couple of more examples over this?
Like maybe if you're at a party and it's at a great restaurant, you could say, "Wow, what a great restaurant. Are there any other places like this in town?"
Anyway, our proposal, our suggestion is that you talk about light topics, like general interests or hobby, and you should definitely not talk about very sensitive issues, because people don't like to get stressed. People don't like to talk about very personal issues, right? And I think that you need to light up the sparkle in your interlocutor's eyes, and only in that case the person would like and would be happy to get engaged with you in the small talk, right? Are there any topics that you should definitely avoid discussing?
Yes. So because it's small talk, the kinds of things you should try to avoid are, medical issues, personal information, money, So oftentimes religion can be very sensitive. So maybe a good idea to stay away from it when you're trying to keep the talk small.
Yeah, exactly. For example, you meet someone and you want to get engaged in the conversation. It's not a good idea to say, oh, your dress looks so expensive. How much do you earn? Or for example, you eat so many, you eat sweet so much. So, do you have diabetes? No, I have a sweet tooth.
Yeah,
just that. Right? And there are specific, very, very safe topics that you can always turn to. Can you name a couple of them?
So definitely the weather. It's almost a cliche, but it's something that anyone can talk about because everyone experiences it every day.
And any example that you can illustrate what you're saying?
So if it's a particularly nice day and the sky is clear, you could say something like, "Wow, did you see Ararat this morning? The sky was so beautiful around it."
Or for example, if you're traveling, or if you know that somebody traveled to a specific place, you can say, for example, "What sites did you visit during your stay in New York? Do you have any recommendations over that?" Right? Do you have any recommendations? Right? And sometimes, if you know the person very well, or at least you're well acquainted with the person, and you can have the luxury of narrowing the conversation down to more specific cases, you can ask, you can start talking about more, specific topics. What can you say, for example?
So if I knew that you were interested in art, which I think you are,
I am.
I would say something like, I just saw a great advertisement for a new exhibit at the National Gallery. You might be interested in attending this weekend.
Good. Or for example, if you want to discuss the specific piece of news or the local news, you can say, for example, "You won't believe it, but," or you can just as well say, "Did you catch the news today? Did you catch the news today?" Which is an equivalent in Armenian to "Իմացար ինչ եղավ այսօր." Or, for example, in more casual atmosphere, you can say, "Բայց իմացար ինչ եղավ այսօր," right?
Yeah.
Okay, and sometimes when you are engaged in a small talk and people tell you their stories, you have to react somehow, right? And if that person is telling you something positive, you need to react accordingly. So is there anything that you can come up with, like that would be really safe to say?
Yeah, you could say, "That's great," or "Wow, that's so interesting."
So emotionally colored expressions would go here. And if that's something really negative and the person is telling you something that's not, that doesn't make him or her happy, you can say, "Oh, that's terrible," right? With a specific face.
How awful.
How awful, that's terrible. Yeah. And if you are in a relationship that the interlocutor will be free to open up and will not have problems in responding to you, you can come up with, for example, "Do you mind if I ask?" Or what else can you say?
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask? Or, "Excuse me, I have some advice I'd like to ask your opinion on."
Good. And sometimes we come across acquaintances we haven't seen for a long time, and there's ready-made expressions, right? What can you say in that case?
Yeah, so you can say "long time no see." That's one that I use pretty often, especially after a year of COVID.
Yeah, exactly. Or for example, you can say, "Haven't seen you for a while. Where have you been all this time?" Haven't seen you for a while. Where have you been all this time? And this can be translated into Armenian like "Ուր ես կորել?" Where have you been all this time? Like "Ուր ես կորել?" Right? Or you can also say, if you need to answer such a reaction, you can say, for example, "This is a small world." This is a small world, right? which is translated into Armenian like երկրագունդը կլոր է, աշխարհը կլոր է, right?
Yeah.
Or for example, if you appear in the same place at the same time, what can you say?
Something like, oh, it's such a coincidence running into you here.
So it's such a coincidence, right? Running into you here. The Armenian would go like ինչ զուգադիպություն, right? And at times we need to quickly wrap up our small talk because we are either in a hurry, right? Or we need to catch up with somebody else. And we definitely don't want to ruin the bond between us and the person. And accordingly, we need to be polite. And in such cases...
especially if it's a stranger, you could say, oh, I had a really great time talking to you, but I have to excuse myself.
Or you can as well say, for example, I need to go. Or you can say, if you intend to go to talk to that person later again, you can say, talk to you later, right? Or if you want to, for example, come up with any farewell expression, then you can say, for example, enjoy the party, or you can say, have fun, right? Have fun, which is translated like Barijamans says, right? Barijamans. Dear Nora, anything else that you'd like to add that would be useful for our audience?
Yeah, I would say that small talk can be hard for everyone, regardless of their native language, and it's just good to approach it with an open mind and enthusiasm, because the more you try it, the better you'll get.
Well, probably this much for today, and we hope that today's lesson was useful for you in sense of starting, maintaining, and wrapping up the small talk. We have a question from Nora Խաթչերյանը. So she's saying, would you please tell the topic once again, because I joined you a bit later. So we were discussing small talks today, and I just want to remind you that in case you failed to join at the very specific time, or you did not have time to follow our live sessions, you can always find them in the video section of the U.S. Embassy Yerevan Facebook page. This was our 6th week. And previously we discussed greetings, farewells, polite expressions, apologies, professional expressions. This was the talk. This was our sixth meeting devoted to small talks. Well, this probably brings us to the very end, right? And from my side, I can just wish you a very peaceful weekend, and we do hope that this weekend will bring, peace and harmony to you and to your family members. Dear Nora,
thank you for watching, and good luck with your small talk.
Thank you, and see you next week on Monday during our video recording, and on Thursday during our live session. So see you next week, and take care.